What a defeating second half. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast, live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Oh my goodness gracious! Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Erika Day. I'm joined by PG1, QB1, on and off the field, in and out of the studio, in and out of the semifinals right now. Stephen Pridgeon Garner, how the heck are you doing today?
Doing good. They had a very underwhelming second half. Some of it understandable considering the schedule constraints that they're working up against, not just playing two games in proximity from one another, but also the travel involved even more. So those things taken into account, this does still feel like it was a missed opportunity considering how well they played in the first half. So I'm looking forward to talking about everything. How you doing?
You know, to be honest, I want to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off with this because I did want to get into that really quick. I know you're the king of context here, but I want to supply some here. Literally less than 48 hours ago, we were in Studio A discussing the win in Game 3 versus the New York Liberty. Remind you, the reigning champions, and that was a tight game. From beginning to end, it was tight. And, not to make excuses for the Mercury, because I don't want to have to make excuses for the Mercury. All of you know, as well as I do, I wanted to be sitting here discussing a win over this loss all days ending in why. But that's the reality of the situation, is that they had less than 44 hours to get to and from the win over New York to this loss. Not even the start of the game, but to right this second, the loss versus the Minnesota Lynx. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The Minnesota Lynx are the best team in the league, and they have been all season. And Steven, I saw your tweet before the show. You have to play a full 40 minutes against Minnesota Lynx. This is a team that can all of a sudden turn on the Jets and make you very much so pay for it in droves. And, the Mercury tried to go on a run of their own at the end of the game to come back, and it just didn't work out. And when you're playing a team as good as the Lynx are in the clutch, that's kind of the way the cookie's going to crumble sometimes.
Yep. Perfectly said.
It is, to a lot of you guys' comments, I hear you. Like, I do. I've been in the chat before before the show even started. I hear all of what you're saying. I understand your gripes, but this loss does not make me feel any less optimistic about the Mercury's chances of winning the series. I saw, a lot of people talking about, oh, well, you have to win 3 and 4 games now. Okay, but you get to come home for 2 of those games, and you still only just have to steal 1 on the road. So, I hear you, I understand you, but at the same time, this doesn't, if anything, I'm more eager to get to game 2 now because of this loss, because the Mercury is going to learn their lesson. They're going to look back at the film, and they're going to get a second to not only have a break, but also have some freaking practice. And practice doesn't mean all that in a bag of chips right now, but it doesn't mean nothing either.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game plan for an opponent. You have to be able to go through things to a certain extent. Obviously, they had a walkthrough earlier today, but that's not the same as like a true shoot-around where you're able to kind of go through things. And that walkthrough didn't even take place like at a basketball court. It took place in the hotel they stayed in, I believe. Just providing context to, again, some of the just anomaly type constraints that they're working up against, to travel, to play a game a day after just playing a deciding game that was also significantly later in the day than the game that took place today. So it wasn't even a full 2 days that they got in terms of rest and recuperation to not just prepare, but also recover. So things were very different in this game. All of those things being said, though, there are some controllable things that we'll get into over the course of this episode, because I have to clean up some things to put together getting 3 wins in this series before it expires.
I want to rip the Band-Aid off with our one-word burns as usual. I like this a lot. It helps us to kind of just let you know how we feel. So, Kevin, if you want to throw those up on the screen for us, my word was exasperating because it was. That second half was aggravating to watch. And the decision-making wasn't always perfect. And the shots weren't falling. And sometimes when you're watching your team and the bounces aren't going your way, it's exasperating, frustrating, irritating. And that's what it was today for me.
Yeah, for me, it's 40. You have to play a full game. I said it post-game. I said it at all of the games in which they played them in the regular season. And when we prospectively talked about them in a potential matchup with the Minnesota Lynx in the playoffs, you have to play a comprehensive game. You can't have any letdowns. You can't have any spells where you have 4 turnovers in 4 or 5 straight possessions. You can't have a stretch in the fourth quarter where you haven't scored in 3.5 to 4 minutes, and they're going down court in turn because they're playing off of your misses and turnovers and scoring. That's a lot to deal with. And in addition to that, there's a demand on their defense that's different from their matchup with the New York Liberty as well. I know some people are thinking you can just play the same. It's not the same team, not the same personnel. They can make you pay in different ways and in a more broad spectrum of ways than New York can because of the ways in which they trust the pass. That puts a different type of demand on the team, and you put that in tandem with tough shot makers, Kayla McBride, Courtney Williams, Napheesa Collier. It really gets tough. Natasha Heidemann even in multiple stretches. That's 4 players, and we're talking about a team that moves it before they get into their tough shot making bag. It's not come down court and get straight to your bag. It's different with the way that they do it. It puts a different pressure on you. So there's a tall task in this series, but at the same time, Minnesota still has to see Phoenix as far as the ways in which Phoenix can put pressure on them too. So they have to do a better job executing for a comprehensive 40 minutes. Obviously, we provided the context for today's game. That won't be an excuse, or not even an excuse. That won't be a dynamic in play going forward because it wasn't an excuse. That's a dynamic they can't have going forward if they're planning on winning 3 games in this series.
I think we should do by the numbers and then go through your keys to see if that, kind of makes sense. So let's do the by the numbers. Let's rip this off. Steven, you want to walk us through these numbers real quick?
Yeah. Phoenix shot 41.3% from the field in today's game. Obviously, on the other side of things, Minnesota shot 44.2%. And they got a boost, especially in the second half in terms of their percentage from the field. The 31% to 13% from deep is relevant, but while we're on the topic of three-point numbers, I want to look specifically at the attempts from each team. So Phoenix only got up 23 attempts compared to Minnesota getting up 29. They only took 6 more attempts, but they made 6 more shots from deep. When you're playing the math game to those extents and the point that got you the lead doesn't hit to the extent that it did in the second half as it did in the first, meaning paint points, they got 42 playoff record in the first half. In the second half, they didn't get 42. They didn't even get half of 42. They didn't score half of 42 in the second half. Or they actually scored literally half of 42, or just barely over that, excuse me. But point being, they scored more points in the paint, which offset the lack of three-point shots that they took and made in the first half. In the second half, that simply just wasn't there. That math working against you, and it's not like they played bad defensively. 9 for 29 from Minnesota is not great. They're a better three-point shooting team than that. So Phoenix did things to take away the three-point line, but when you get to the fourth quarter, and I can't remember what other numbers we had up there, but the specific number I'm looking at, 8 offensive rebounds for the Minnesota Lynx, and 3 specifically in the fourth quarter from Kahleah, and 2 of those 3 that she got, I can't remember if they scored on that third one, but the 2 that I'm thinking about both resulted in fourth quarter three-pointers made from Kayla McBride. That's a crucial juncture in the game, and the timing of those shots that came from offensive rebounds, second chance points. Those are fatal. Kayla McBride just got done speaking about it in postgame. The game is about possessions coming playoff time, especially when you have 2 teams that are this talented.
Yep.
It's about testing each other's will and finding those marginal ways to create room for separation, which talked about on this podcast a whole lot. That's what they did in the fourth quarter. Phoenix didn't have it, and that was the difference in the game.
And I really don't want to butcher her last name. The Maria that came in the fourth quarter. Most meaningful 8 minutes of the game for the Minnesota Lynx.
Plus 16 in 8 minutes.
Right,
You can't overstate that.
Like the rebounds that she was getting, the possessions that she was creating for the Lynx was the difference maker. Yep. And, you know, I saw some people talking about DeWanna Bonner in the game, that late in the game. The only reason she was in the game at that point was to compete with Maria on the glass, because DeWanna Bonner and AT were, if I'm not mistaken, you have the numbers pulled up, but they were definitely leading the Mercury in rebounds. And really, it wasn't even close. So she was necessary in order to even compete on the possession count with the Lynx in this situation. So to your point, like, it's won in the margins late in the game, and the Mercury just couldn't get it done today. I don't foresee this being the same. The by the numbers is not going to look exactly the same in game 2. And you know, we're going to go to the turnover real quick, because I feel like that's a really good indicator of the differences between the first and the second half. Mercury had 2 turnovers in the first half. 2! And the Lynx had 6 or 8 or 6. And so that's either a 4 to 8 difference. Nonetheless, you're going from 2 in the first half for the Mercury to 8. That's a big, big difference. And so, you know, their ball handling has to get better. And, you know, when Mo goes down, like, that's scary times for Mercury fans. Scary times for us. The no let out by Kevin and I was loud. I imagine our downstairs neighbors were able to hear that one. But, you know, it's a tough situation. You hate to see it, but I think the Mercury are going to turn it around. Do you want to get into your keys now?
I mean, you still got a little bit on the numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip ahead?
No, you good.
My bad, y'all.
Just looking at the rebounding is one thing to identify. It's another thing to identify how to go about combating that. DeWanna Bonner is the leading rebounder in playoff history. That's not by just a sheer volume of games. There's intent behind the rebounds that she gets for her teams at timely, crucial moments. I think it's a literal tall task if Kahleah is playing minutes, even if it is just an 8-minute stretch, a random stretch, to increase the lead or to shrink a margin of defeat that they're at or deficit that they're at over the course of a game, like it was in the fourth quarter of today's game. I think for the Mercury, with the lineups that they're using, if it's AT with Satu and DeWanna Bonner on the floor, I think stature-wise, because of that matchup, I think Satu might be the better matchup to put a box out onto Kahleah and just kind of move some furniture in the paint. I think Satu has a stature that's a little better built for kind of banging in the paint with someone that's taller and as physically laden as Kahleah is. It wasn't for a lack of effort that DeWanna wasn't able to get some of those rebounds with Kahleah. It was more so when DeWanna usually hits somebody in terms of hitting and then getting into the box out, she usually shifts the spot and is able to either get a fingertip on it or just literally grab the rebound. With Kahleah, it takes early work, which DeWanna was doing, but then that extra force in terms of your ability to hit someone at the right spot. So if you're talking about boxing out, you want to hit someone on their shoulder or their hip first and then get into your box out in terms of a check. And then you can pursue the basketball. And if you got someone that's bigger, stronger than you, and when you hit those spots, it's not as effective, it gets hard. Now you got to rely on those other players that are on the court with you to help you with multiple efforts and them having a potential better angle since that person is boxing you out. So I would like to see Satu on Kahleah. I know it wasn't something that was anticipated in Newsflash. Cheryl Reeve is one of the best coaches of all time because of that outside-the-box thinking. That was the difference in the game. I don't think Kahleah gets all of those rebounds. And if Satu is boxing her out and she's able to take away even just one of those, and if it's that very first one that led to the McBride 3, that's a tie game going into that next possession at 89 or whatever the score was. And it shifts the course of the game going down the rest of the fourth quarter.
I don't like to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game, especially in the playoffs in situations like this. But I think the number was 16 personal fouls called. There were only 11 free throw attempts in the entire game. Do you think that benefited? And I know the answer to this. I'm just asking for the education of our beloved listeners here. Do you think that benefited or hurt the Mercury today?
I mean, it definitely benefited because they play the most physical defense in the WNBA. It's not just Alyssa Thomas. That's part of their team identity. And if a officiating crew is allowing for both of these teams, the two best defenses, the 1A and 1B in the NBA or in the WNBA, to just go after it, that's to the benefit of both teams. And that's what you want in the playoffs. You don't want to see a whistle that's breaking up the flow of the game or giving someone an advantage when they're both playing a very similar blue-collar brand of basketball on the defensive end. This is exactly what you would ask for. It was basically even, 6-4. That's not enough to shift things in terms of, oh my God, we got to defend more without fouling. You only gave up 2 more free throw attempts than you took yourself. Now, the rebuttal to that is if the Mercury had 42 points in the paint in the first half, that means that they're playing through a lot of contact. They're playing with a lot of force. You might say you hope to have seen more fouls called in your favor. But again, if the whistle is consistent, you won't hear me say anything about it. Last thing I'm going to do is give credence to officials for dictating a game if it's not apt. And this game, it definitely wouldn't have been apt for. They were consistent on both ends.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. It's definitely a flip coin from the game one we saw earlier today between the Aces and the Fever, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everything was a foul in that game, and then this game they just kind of let everybody go. And the only reason I even asked that is because I think when you play into the factor for the Mercury side of things, the fatigue factor, I think it could have maybe shifted things just a little tiny bit, but at the same time, woulda, coulda, shoulda, like it's a thing of the past now at this point. Shout out to all of you guys who are in our comments. The same people that were here after the win. Win or lose, y'all ride with the Mercury, and we can appreciate that. So be sure to leave a like, 5-star review, thumbs up, wherever you get your podcast. I saw someone became a member. Oop, Bioactive Socks. That's my guy. I don't know who that is, but what's up, Bioactive Socks? Shout out to you for becoming a member. You can become a member at the first link down in the description box below, just like Bioactive Socks. You get like custom emojis. You get to have a little emoji next to your name at all times. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Not going to say anything if you don't do it, but if you do it, I hear it makes you cooler than everyone else in the chat. And also one last thing about the commenters real quick. You're not in the right place. You're looking for the cards chat. Shout out to you guys though for being here. Be sure to leave a like before you go. Did we finish the numbers or we got one more to go?
I think we hit them all.
Okay, period. I just want to make sure we get to them before we shift to the keys because
while we're on numbers, this isn't included in what we had on the graphic, but Satu, Sammy, Kahleah, Dewana, and Alyssa, the go-to lineup that got them over the hump against the New York Liberty, -15 tonight, or this afternoon rather, against the Minnesota Lynx. Not going to get it done. That is not going to be enough. Now, naturally, a lot of that came in the fourth quarter. That is what it is, and that was where the biggest shift in the game took place. But you need that lineup to hit, not necessarily in the exact same way that it did against New York because this is a different matchup, like I mentioned. But you need it to be one of, if not your best lineup that you're using, because that is going to be the lineup that's likely closing games, especially if Monique isn't able to find her footing and find her rhythm in terms of scoring in particular. They need more from her on offense. This one isn't on her, and I'm not pointing a finger at her at all, but when you shrink your rotation to 8, that means that there's a higher demand on every single bit of those 8 players. And that means that the shots that you're taking, especially if they're your shots, and that mid-range shot is certainly Monique's, she got to knock that down. Either that or she got to take that extra dribble and get below the free throw line and get to the cup. Wasn't enough from her individually in today's game, but you can say that's from everybody considering what the first half looked like in comparison to the second half. So they got to be better, clean it up. I imagine they're going to find pockets where they're looking at Monique and saying, you took a lot of the shots that you usually are comfortable taking. She's a player that Nate has extended the midi pull-up to because it's an efficient shot for her.
Yep.
But now it comes with discernment. If they're giving drop coverage, Mo, can you just go get to the cup and put pressure on the rim and get a free throw attempt? If not, get a bucket and a free throw attempt, or just kick out.
Yep. And
now you got somebody shooting wide open threes. I think just little moments of decision or indecision like that kind of showed up over the course of this one. And yeah, they all got to be better comprehensively.
For sure. I think, to your point, it's a numbers game. And first of all, I don't think anyone that is a normal three-point shooter for this team gets the amount of shots that Nate Tibbetts wants them to get up today, and that doesn't help their case. And then to my point earlier, when they're not getting to the free throw line, it doesn't help to implore them to find their rhythm. So it's a tough game to come out and not shoot the ball super well. but it's not that this team can't recover from that either. So I think this is definitely one of those games that, to my own point earlier, they're going to go to the hotel room, get a nice dinner tonight, take a nap, and look at the film tomorrow and get some good shots in the gym, because to Steven's point, like, they didn't even go to the arena until their shoot around this morning.
They have time.
Like, so, you know, they had team breakfast, a walkthrough in the ballroom, and then got on the bus to go to the game. And there's definitely a difference between a pregame shoot around and a practice the day before. So, but Kahleah Copper, and we're going to get to the X Factor here in a minute, but I want to talk about Kahleah really quick because this is her first time playing against Minnesota all season. Mm-hmm. She finished with 22 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. I didn't think it was, you know, the best game we've ever gotten from Kahleah Copper, but I also didn't think it was the worst either. And I had made a joke earlier in the day that Kahleah likes to eat cats, you know, because she likes to play the Lynx a little bit. And I still feel that way. I don't feel, and like, this is probably not the greatest verbiage for this exact conversation, but I don't feel turned off by this game from Kahleah Copper. In fact, like, I feel like this is kind of a good bridge to gap the game we saw from game 3 versus New York to what is inevitable in game 2 versus Minnesota. So I think it was a good showing from Ka. She needs her supporting cast around her to be better. AT, we're obviously going to get to, because that girl was getting it done in the first half of the game. And to say she was the X Factor is kind of an understatement at this point. So, but Ka was still Ka.
She was. I mentioned Satu was my X Factor for 2-way reasons, but for Kahleah in particular, what we talked about in post-game, this was before we got the Diggins-Smith news, was that the only matchup they had that had a chance against Ka was Diggins-Smith herself.
Yep.
And if Diggins-Smith was in the lineup, that means that one of Kayla McBride or Bridget Carlton is not in the lineup. That's taking away one of their dead eyes, which plays into the advantage of the Mercury defensively when they're talking about guarding Minnesota, but specifically to Phoenix on offense. For Kahleah, again, when she smells blood in the water, just like a shark, she's going to the paint. You know how many attempts at the rim she had today? 8. 8 attempts at the rim for Kahleah alone. 6 for 8 at the rim, 75%. Also, the Mercury only made 3 threes. You know how many of those Kahleah made? 2 of them.
Yeah.
So 66% of those threes that they made came from Kahleah. She played a great game. They found ways to get the ball to her on the second side, to get to the easy baskets for her in the 2-player action on the empty side with Alyssa Thomas. Kyle was also just coming off of handoffs and then pick and roll and just going to get to her spots, her kill spots, the midi pull up around the elbow, and even more so at the rim. And at the rim again and again. She was at their necks. And that's the exact type of mentality you need for her to sustain over the course of this series. Now, again, the rebuttal is if Kyle gets to the rim 8 times and she doesn't have a single free throw attempt in the game, you want to say something, but if they're keeping it consistent, then you just throw your hands up and say, just hoop. And that was what the situation was today. Now, naturally, I think they call at least a little bit more fouls in game 2 and the rest of the series until it's a potential game 5. But until then, Kai keeping that mindset and just being in kill mode. Every touch, she's looking to get a piece of the paint for herself or for someone else. That's the space they need to be operating in. And I think they did so creatively as well. Not just getting straight to what they want to get to, but doing a good job of carving out space, knowing that Minnesota wants to take away pockets of the floor, knowing that Minnesota wants to load up in gaps, making sure they created that space for Kai to do what she needs to do for them to be their best selves offensively in the half court. It was there. The opportunity was there. She did a great job in that.
I want to talk about one other player before we go to the break. It's Hong Kong, Natasha Mack. And I want to get to this because we've had quite a few questions for you specifically in the comments about Mack, and I want to make sure we get to them. So Mack finished the game with 6 points, 3 rebounds. Yeah, 6 points and 3 rebounds in 12 minutes. Started the first quarter and then I don't think played again until the start of the third quarter and then sat pretty quickly after that. Do you think the answer was Matt getting more minutes, or do you think that makes a difference? And I do think Mack played extremely well in that first quarter. I don't have to, truth be told, y'all, back against the wall, I don't have any recollection of Natasha Mack starting that third quarter. I have no idea what she did, but I do remember her playing her rear end off at the beginning of the first quarter. So any thoughts on that particular question?
Yeah, I'm double checking something real quick. Just trying to see what her minute total was in game 5. I don't know why my computer is moving slow right now, but Natasha Mack is very important to this Mercury team. I don't know if playing her in the fourth quarter is what they're going to need per se. It would be something that would certainly be helpful, but is it a situation where what she was going to bring or what she was going to be able to do against Klindakova was going to be enough to shift things and make it make more sense for the lineups that got them to this point in the fourth quarter? I can't imagine Max played that many fourth quarter minutes this series, excluding game 2 when it was a blowout.
Yeah.
So because of that, again, you don't want to make rushed decisions. You don't want to be the team that's blinking first when you don't need to blink. It's as simple as boxing out. Check, hit, pursue the ball. And they didn't do enough of that. Obviously, Matt can help with that, but what's the
trade-off?
What's the trade-off on offense? Because what you need is space. And Mac does what she does, but you need it in doses. It can't be your end-all, be-all. Yeah. That's not what the identity of this team is built off of.
Correct.
So you just got to kind of think about it a little bit deeper. Yes, she could help, but what's the impact on the other side of it? And to the point, though, she played well. She played the way that they needed her to for the most part. She was big in the paint, all types of help being shown. She was active against Alyssa Smith in the first half, especially. I feel like she won those minutes against Atlanta, which is not easy in any capacity because those are two blue-collar, high-energy players that find ways to impact the game on the periphery. To outdo Atlanta is not an easy task at all. She's equally as physical, equally as athletic, and equally as just active in general. So that was a neutral trade-off, if you will, because Mac didn't play in the fourth quarter, but guess who else hardly played in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, Alana.
Exactly.
And I'm going to say it, when our girl Mac is hanging in there versus the literal defensive player of the year, the whole studio, and by that I do mean just me, Kevin, and Steven, were throwing up a little honk action because it was going crazy and she was going crazy. And you love to see it, especially in the playoffs. And getting this experience now is going to help later. And I'm going to stand on that sentiment. She might not be playing the fourth quarter right this second, but one of these days they're going to need her in the fourth quarter, whether that be in this series versus the Lynx or, knock on wood, the next series versus whoever wins that other game, that other side of the bracket. So I'm not stressing it. I'm still having a good time. Vibes are still high. After this quick break here on the PHNX Mercury podcast, we're going to talk about post-game, player of the game, as well as just a quick look ahead to game 2 and what can change. Mountain America Credit Union, guys. Everyone needs a checking account, and you can get the checking account that gives you all the rewards and more. If I can get this pulled up, that would be super, super helpful. And then it's not even in there. Okay, wait, guys. Okay. You can enjoy restaurant deals, telehealth access, mobile phone protection, identity protection, loan rate discounts, offers on travel, and so much more. Make my style your lifestyle at Mountain America Credit Union. Visit macu.com/mystyle to apply. Insured by NCUA. Membership is required based on eligibility. Some benefits required. No cost, registration, or activation. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Steven, the Mercury keep winning, and so I keep driving. That's literally all that keeps happening. They win, I drive. They win, I drive. And you know who's helping me out every time I have to get in my car and throw another nice little 150 miles on there on a casual Sunday afternoon?
Circle K. Circle
K, man. 25 cents off a gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. 3 cents a gallon on every single fill-up after that. You can work your way up into the 5 cent off club. Literally just yesterday, I was at Circle K, randomly got 10 cents off. For no reason. I just existed and they threw me 10 cents. When you give a dog a bone, man, they buy gas. That's what I hear anyways. But you can be just like me, 79 cent Polar Pop, 99 cent Froster, $3 for $5 Gatorades. Man, the deals are piling up is what the streets are saying. Join the Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. You know, I just have to ask, you have to wonder, maybe if the squad had stopped by Circle K on their way out of town, the result today would have been different.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Maybe they just needed like one of those coffees, those sour gummy worms. I like the Circle K brand the best. I feel like they're more sour than the other ones.
Nah, maybe the league needed to stop by Circle K before deciding to schedule the series the way that they did, but
we're not bitter. We've never been bitter. This is just a show where we talk about basketball. No bitter attitude over here. Well, I want to talk
Real quick, speaking of potentially bitter attitudes, Steven, you listened to the post-game press conference, and I just saw a tweet that was circulating about something that Minnesota's coach said about the flat screens that Phoenix run. It was compared to the tush push in the NFL, and that if it does not start going better for the Lynx in terms of the calls, they might be petitioning it. Can you give us a little bit more context as to why the Lynx feel this way?
Well, Cheryl was just being personable. I didn't
She was
see
just
it or
being
think it
goofy.
any other
Y'all know
way.
I like to dislike
We don't
that
have
woman,
to.
but
Y'all
she's
love to
goofy.
do entirely too much when it comes to Cheryl Reeve, and that's not what we're doing on this podcast. But people definitely do too much for the things that she says. Cheryl is great. She said what she said, and she obviously understands that that's going to be a riddle for them to solve throughout the course of this series. They had some answers in the second half, and naturally, with us getting ready to speak to Alyssa Thomas, I think it's a perfect time to kind of transition to the X Factor.
X Factor of the game, and listen, we're gonna have an X Factor of the game every game. It doesn't matter win or lose, and it's probably gonna be AT almost every time, because 18 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and I still feel like it almost doesn't tell the full story of what type of game she had today, and especially in that first half. I feel like Engine doesn't even really like describe the first half. More like bulldozer, semi truck. Like we already have the Mack truck, so we can't run with the semi truck thing. But like
Tank, how about Tank?
yeah, I mean, what couldn't she do? Who could stop her? Nobody was the answer. And you know, that's when you get that iconic clip of her answering the question about, oh, how are you handling guarding Fee? And she says back to Holly, oh well, she has to guard me too. Throw some respect on her. Third in the MVP voting, probably should have been second, but I'll let the general masses argue about that. I'll stay out of it. But another overall fantastic performance from our MVP.
Yeah, Alyssa was great. That first half was some of the best basketball she's played the entire season on both ends of the floor. I look specifically at the first quarter. She, I think, had 8 points on 8 shots.
Yep.
She was not shy about putting up attempts and going into the chest of whoever it was that happened to be guarding her to start the game. That helped to set a tone for the Mercury that ultimately led to them finishing the first quarter with a lead. You don't get to that point without that tone being set from that particular player because of the particular matchup that she has. Alyssa was doing Alyssa things. We saw LeBun bouncing up and down in transition a whole lot. Always, like I mentioned, the barometer, the indicator for if they're playing their style of basketball or not. And that was because they got a lot of stops in the first quarter. And she was doing what she does best. She was being that floor general. She was being that kind of dynamic dart in transition that puts pressure on the rim and creates the shots that they want. She played very well. It was fun to watch the back and forth between her and the Minnesota Lynx defense over the course of the game. Early in the game, she goes to her first couple. Well, actually, even before the first couple, the very first possession of the game is AT getting a screen from Satu Sabli. So it's not inverted pick and roll because they're relatively the same size. But what it is bringing Kayla McBride into action. And they end up scoring on that play. I think it was a switch, and she ended up just attacking and beating Kayla McBride to the spot, putting her on the shoulder, and then putting up 2. What was fun to watch over the course of the game as it shifted from them giving a switch sometimes, whether it was her initiating it or if it was Satu initiating it, to sometimes them going in the show and recover, and they both did a good job of getting it to the shooter that was screening and then popping in that situation to get a basket. In the second half, though, because of the abundance of success they saw from that particular action with Satu and AT running pick and rolls with smaller players, things got different. And I think that's where some of the game shifted as well, because what was an advantage, a pressure point for the Mercury, turned into something that they kind of ran into a little bit of a speed bump with, because Minnesota stopped letting their guards show their bodies. And when their bodies weren't showing on the screen, there was no action taking place, no advantages were being created. So once they decided to get downhill, they started being a little more aggressive with their low help around the rim. And naturally, I'm thinking in the third quarter, there was a moment where Alyssa ends up just going off of the screen or rejecting the screen, I believe, and she ends up hitting Kahleah Copper for a corner 3 at a timely moment. Ka makes that 3. But it wasn't, again, we talked about them only making 3 threes today. That was like a one-off. And again, credit to Cheryl Reeve and company. I feel like that's one of their adjustments to that specific coverage. Kevin asked about the flat screens. Cheryl talked about that being a riddle for them to solve. they found something that was a solve for them, at least in a short-term pocket, which was that second half of the series or second half of game one. Is that sustainable? It better not be, because like we talked about in Friday nights, after Friday night's win, their three-point percentage being sub 30% was not going to get it done in this series. And what we see in game one, less than 20% from deep, like 13%, I think, or something like that. So they got to knock down shots. Otherwise, Minnesota's going to lean on, we'll just help off of players, and if they take it, cool. If they make it, that's up for debate. But until they start making them, we're not going to respect it to that extent.
Did you feel like this game was a deja vu from game one versus the Liberty, or no?
Nah, it was different, because it felt like it wasn't Phoenix. It wasn't their lack of execution in the fourth quarter. It felt like it was more Minnesota doing what they do best, and that's being a team that plays for a full 40. And when you put that in tandem with the lack of three-point shooting from Phoenix, that's tough. That's tough to deal with. They won't win another game. They won't win a game this series if they're only making, on average, three three-pointers per game, especially if the free throw margin is what it is. Yeah. Those things add up. You got to get your threes to fall. They're not a three-point team by identity, but they're a team that needs their threes to be made.
Yeah, for sure. So did we talk about your keys yet? We haven't.
We didn't get to the keys yet.
Oh, I want to make sure we get to them, because I feel like, again, Steven educates me all the time, and I like it when he gets to educate you guys too. So let's talk about these keys. Key one.
Yeah, key one, the operative word for the series. I mentioned it on Friday after the postgame show. And here I am talking about it again. Execution is the name of the series. It's very simple, very duh analysis, but the team that executes best is going to win. But it's not just about doing it the best. It's about sustaining at that level in particular. It's a war of will, a war of attrition against Minnesota. They're not going to budge. You know what they do. That's part of their identity. So you have to meet it in your own way. Otherwise, you're going to be succumbed to their version of it, and that's what tonight's game was. Number two, if we could pull the keys back up real quick, Kevo. Number two is pressure and activity in the defensive shell. So in the first half, it was very much that. Phoenix was spending a lot of time playing off of misses from Minnesota, forcing them into turnovers in particular as well. I think they had 7 turnovers in the second quarter alone, which was, I think Phoenix scored on almost all but one of those turnovers that they forced in the second quarter. So that's the identity of the brand that they need to play in terms of the game that they're playing it off of. But comprehensively, again, going back to key one, key two wasn't comprehensive enough for that defense to have the impact. And number 3 was the usage of Satu. Half of that was good. The scoring impact wasn't to the extent that they needed it to be, unfortunately. And again, not putting it on one specific player, because it's bigger than just one player in that second half, but they need more from Satu as they do from AT and Kahleah and every other player in their top 8 rotation going into game 2 if they're going to steal one on the road before coming back home to Phoenix at the later end of this upcoming week.
When we look ahead to game 2, what are the biggest things, tangibles, that need to make a big shift?
Execution first. You have to execute. You simply have to. And to dive into it more defensively, you can't concede those pockets to Courtney Williams to do what she does. Yep. So whether it's shifting coverage, whether it's just hitting the do your job better button, which I feel like it's more so that than needing to shift what it is that they do.
I agree.
They just have to do it better, and they have to sustain at that level like they did in the first half. But the other part of that too is the versatility bit. You want Alyssa on Napheesa Collier, but is there a point where you put Alyssa on someone else to shift things and make Minnesota adjust because you have that back pocket, that ace in your back pocket, and Alyssa's versatility being all-time great? You don't have to go about defending Fee in the same ways that other teams can have to. I agree. You don't have to have Alyssa there. That's a great piece to use. And obviously you can shift back to it when you want to, but I mentioned it back in July and reiterated it in August, and here we are in September, them going up against this very same team. If you get to a point where you put Monica Cole-McConney on Kayla McBride, which allows for you to shift Collier to somewhere else, probably on the Bridget Carlton or someone like that. And that allows for Alyssa to guard someone like Courtney Williams. So now when she wants to get in her pick and rolls, she doesn't have those pockets to poke at and get to her midi pull-up or get to the basket, because Alyssa is just switching if it's Satu that's guarding Napheesa if she's setting a screen. Or if they want to bring in Atlanta Smith and set those screens and it's DeWanna Bonner there, that's just a switch as well.
Yep.
So if those are just switches, which most teams can't do, especially not as comfortably as Phoenix can, that takes away something off the table from them. They have to work deeper into the shot clock. And if they're doing those things, anytime a team's working deep in the clock, for one, it's not an efficient shot that typically comes. But for two, with Phoenix, that's a place where they turn a lot of turnovers into points. So something to just keep in mind. I keep saying it. I feel like it's going to happen at some point, maybe in game 2, maybe later on in the series. But
I like that
the versatility
idea
bit.
because there were multiple times today where it felt like Courtney was the fastest player on the court.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily the truth of the matter, but I think situationally it's easier for her to get into her position and go around people. And she did that multiple times today. And I think if AT's on her, that becomes a lot harder. But then also the passing out to whoever to get away from, so she can't, because she's obviously not going to be able to penetrate on Alyssa freaking Thomas. So that's going to make that pass a lot harder. And then, you know, their option 2, 3, and 4 come a lot later and a lot harder than it would have in the first place when, you know.
And the key to me mentioning that Phoenix is a team that, again, this is the 1A and 1B defense in the W for different varying reasons, but they play a similar style of defense. If you're not giving Minnesota, if you're shrinking the spaces where they can poke at things, if it's harder for them to get you in rotation because you're able to flip some of their main advantage creating actions into switches, that makes things harder on them. This is chess. This is what the playoffs are all about. You have to be a chess player if you're going up against the one and only Cheryl Reeve, especially when she has pieces like Courtney freaking Williams and Napheesa Collier to kind of lean into offensively. I feel like it's going to be better for the Mercury if they get to that point where they're leaning into their versatility more in spots that we saw against Dallas, against Indiana, and against a couple of other teams over the course of the regular season. But in addition to that, though, the other thing for me going into game 2, it's been pointing out the flaws and some of the negatives a lot. This wasn't a bad game for me. I feel like they did a lot of fun stuff on offense. I talked to Kai post-game. I got to ask a question this time. That's not on Mercury PR. Olivia, shout out Olivia. We appreciate her. It's more so on the logistics of the league and how they do things in post-game and playoffs. But I asked Kai about the second side actions that they got to, and she said, yeah, that's something there certainly was an emphasis, and it's something they're going to lean into more because your first option is never going to be there against Minnesota. No different than it's going to never be there when you're going up against Phoenix. You have to be layered in your approach, otherwise you won't score. Other thing, though, with that, or even independent of that, is their pick and rolls. It wasn't always Alyssa and Satu running pick and rolls. We saw a lot of Monique Cole-McConaughey running pick and rolls and them spacing all the way to the other side of the floor and just giving those players 2-on-2 space to operate in, and they got a lot of points out of that. That's something they can lean into more. I like where they put the point of their screens at. If you're thinking about them running pick and rolls from the wing area, where they usually run it from right at the wing, they put it lower than the break, kind of almost in the corner, and then coming off of those screens. And that just creates so much more space, and they did things with that. I think there's more that they can get from it, but Monique also has to be more aggressive in those situations as well, which kind of brings me back to kind of a resounding point. Outside of Kai and Satu and AT, somebody else has to step up and be a consistent double-digit scorer the rest of this series. They can't have a lapse where they're not having other people get to that extent. Otherwise, it's going to be too heavy of a burden with the tough shot makers that Minnesota has on their side to match what Phoenix does with their big 3.
Well, and if it's only 2 of the big 3, fine, but DeWanna Bonner has to go off for 15 then. Like, that's the way that this team is constructed at this point. And so, you know, it's to your point, like, 3 people need to be firing on all cylinders, whether it's DeWanna Bonner or Sammy Whitcomb even. You know, they need a third person to make sure that they're the difference maker. You know, when Napheesa is on the postgame with Holly Rowe today, she had her 2 pieces on side next to her, Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams. AT needs her 2 pieces next to her, and she's got 1 solidified in Kahleah Copper today, but I don't know who that third person would be up on the podium with her today. So it's got to be someone, and it has to be they have to step up. And to our point, like, they know this, especially the 2 players that we're talking so in depth about right now, which is Sammy and DB. Like, we're talking about 2 veteran winners that know what it takes to win a series like this. DeWanna Bonner's been doing it a long time with Connecticut, did it in Phoenix. Sammy Whitcomb has won literally every level she's ever played at. And so I don't think any of them are backing down from this challenge. And if anything, when the lights get brighter, these types of players play their best. So, I mean, we saw it in Game 3 versus New York. I think we'll continue to see it in Game 2 versus Minnesota. As much as they're ready, I'm sure, to bring the series back to Phoenix, they want to do the electric slide in Minnesota. They would love nothing more than to pull a Skylar Diggins-Smith and do a little electric slide on the floor. They would love that. So, you know, all of these things that you're saying in the comments and we're saying here on the show, these players don't need to be told that. They're professionals. They know what they're doing, and they're going to walk in on Tuesday extremely prepared.
Get Fit has I think a good conversation point saying that they don't need to be better offensively against the Lynx. We just got to get stops. We need to stop their shooting defensively. I don't fully agree with that, though, because 69 points against
enough.
Minnesota is not going to be enough.
I think holding them to 82 is you give yourself a chance to win with 82 points. Every night, if you're playing the Lynx, you give yourself a chance to win with them only putting up 82 points. But you do not give yourself a chance to win in 85% of games with 69 points, especially playoff games. Versus MVP candidate in Napheesa Collier and an all-time legendary coach in Cheryl Reeves. Like, you are not going to walk away with 69 points and a dub. So unless they just quite literally do not score at all for the fourth quarter, which would be an absolutely egregious game for the Minnesota Lynx. So we would be having a party here at PHX headquarters. So I just hear you, but I think your assessment is probably pretty correct.
For full context purposes, and that's the reason why I'm bringing this conversation up. In the first round, Phoenix averaged 75.8 points. That's a whole lot more likely of the number that they're going to need to be close to, if not 1 or 2 points higher than to eke out a series win against the Minnesota Lynx. So 69 points is just not going to get it done. Now, obviously, you factor in 2 or 3 made threes, that shifts things. But even then, they still need more than just those 2 or 3 made threes because Minnesota made 9. And that was off a great defense that Phoenix played in terms of taking away the three-point line for the most part, which we talked about the numbers. They shot 31% from deep in this one, Minnesota did. So they need more from their offense. And they get more from their offense, that's going to keep their defense set. And that's the back and forth that we've been trying to paint a picture of all season long. Phoenix gets a stop. Alyssa Thomas's bun is bouncing in the wind. Whether they score directly off of that stop or they get into the half court, they're playing the game on their terms. And if they go and score or they get fouled, they keep their defense set. That's when they start to weigh on opponents. We talked about kills. Courtney Williams mentioned kills on the live game press conference. When they get those kills and they're starting to dictate things and they're playing the game on their terms, that's when they're at their best. However, the push and pull is when Minnesota's at their best, they're doing the exact same thing. So you have to play the game to your identity better than Minnesota is. And if they're not doing that, which they did not comprehensively in tonight's game, that's the difference. The first half was on Phoenix's terms. The second half was not.
What I fear Steven is saying is that AT has been the Mercury floor general all season. She needs to be the Minnesota Lynx floor general as well, but just in a terrible way, you know?
She needs to be the thorn, which she was in the first half. They're going to find things on film, and I feel like one of the things that I'm looking at is for Satu, I enjoyed her game on offense in terms of her shot selection. She missed some shots at the rim that I feel like are makeable for her, and I think it might just be she was 3 for 6. There was like 1 or 2 where I feel like when she was at the rim, she could put a little bit more pressure on whoever it is that's trying to stop her from scoring at the basket, whether that be the direct defender that's on her or the help defender that's trying to cut her angle off it. And I think it comes down more than anything to just her playing off of 2 feet. I think I mentioned it maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but if there was one thing that I would give to Satu, it would be time spent with Tina Charles in terms of the footwork around the rim. Because when you master playing off of pivots, you're never at a disadvantage. Even if somebody's attached to your hip or in front of you, you get around the rim and you throw a pump fake up and you get a reverse pivot in, now you've created contact. And if you're scoring through that contact the ways in which she can and has shown to do all season long, that's somebody that can get 25 a game. And I'm so serious about that. Knocking down 2.5 to 3 threes a game and getting to the free throw line 6 or 7 times. That's a recipe for success, and she's the unicorn for multiple reasons. I think if she slows it down just a little bit at the rim and plays off of 2 feet more, I think the game is hers. She has to be that player for this team in this series for for them to get to the finals.
Well, and I think to give Satu a little bit of credit here, she's coming from the Dallas Wings. It's not like she's got a ton of playoff experience where she's been waiting for this moment to get her revenge on someone because she lost in the finals. Like, that's not what the Wings have been doing. So, you know, she is putting her team. She put her team in a position to win early in the season. That's why they're in this position now where they're playing the Minnesota Lynx. I think as the series plays out, she's just going to get more and more comfortable playing this level of basketball. Satu only played twice versus the Minnesota Lynx this year, and she did it without her 2/3 of her big three next to her.
None of those games came with Satu in the
or
court.
DeWanna Bonner. DeWanna Bonner literally was not a Phoenix Mercury yet. Like, I think there is so much context here that we are not giving to them. So, you know, it's obviously stings if you're a Mercury fan to lose this, especially after the first half. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Nothing other than ouch. But at the same time, like, if the first half didn't give you high hopes, I don't know what will. Like, they were on their way to routing the, you know, best team in the league and, like, got tired. And that's the truth. And I hate that a lot of people are probably going to watch this podcast and be like, oh my gosh, Erika just wants to make excuses for the team. But like 44 hours ago, they were up the street, like literally 2 blocks away playing basketball. So now they're 2,000 miles and a whole lot of flights and a whole lot of, I'm sure it's cold up there. I don't even, who knows, you know? So
I do want to credit Minnesota. When speaking of Phoenix needing to be better and play a full 48, I think the Lynx defense was significantly better in the second half than it was in the first, which brings me to a point that I wanted to bring up on the Phoenix side, but it's going to be through the lens of appreciating what Minnesota did defensively in the second half. First half, even the first half of the third quarter, so the first 2.5 quarters, Phoenix was doing a good job of not just running their primary actions or getting to the second side. We saw a lot of cutting. There's a play where I talked about the empty side pick and rolls that they were getting into where I think it might have been Collier that's coming off an empty corner or empty side pick and roll with AT. She comes off of that, and Minnesota, no different than Phoenix's defense, is aggressive at the nail to keep Ka from getting to turn the corner and get to the paint. Mack is the one whose defender helped off to cut Ka off. So Mack just times up those 45 cut from the wing straight to the basket, splits the defense, and she gets an easy uncontested 2 because of that. That was like the one-off of that scenario where they're cutting to create advantage on the periphery from what Minnesota is doing to load up and take things away from the primary of Phoenix's offense. They need more of their cutting. Their cutting is their biggest weapon. They've been the best cutting team on scoring production, but also points per cut the entire season. You can't go away from that part of your identity on offense. It's great to have the Alyssa Thomas pick and rolls, Satu post-ups, Ka post-ups. You can't forget about the cutting part. It's going to take those unscripted points against Minnesota to win the series. And again, you have to get back to that. In the fourth quarter, there was no cutting at all. And I think that's a little bit of what was missing for them, leading to late shot clock attempts and not the most efficient or effective attempts at the basket.
All right, well, I want to get game 2 predictions from you, Kevo, and myself. Steven, you're up first. I went first last time.
I went first last time.
No way.
Yeah,
Pretty sure
I think you did.
I went first Friday night.
Okay, fine. I'll go first again. I don't care.
No, let Kevin go first this time.
Oh, yeah, Kevin, you're right. You're up.
Mercury 78, Minnesota Lynx 72.
Wow, it sounds like it's gonna give me a heart attack. Woo!
You probably got 4 more games of that, so you might as well start getting comfortable.
I need to just not drink any more caffeine for the rest of the week. Give my heart a break.
Well, you got 3 days off or 4 days off between game 2 and game 3, so.
So load up during that time,
Load
but
up.
every other day,
Yep.
if they playing, I just need to leave the drinks at home because my heart already is pounding enough with or without the caffeination. So I'm gonna go. I actually really like that score that Kevin just gave, but I can't give the same one because I'm real like that. We're gonna go 82 to 76. Mercury dub. Dubs in the chat.
Who's your player of the game, Kevin?
Ka.
I'm going Satu.
Okay. I'm going 76-75 Phoenix. I think this game is going to be another clutch one. It's going to come down to possessions. And I think that Phoenix does a better job of committing multiple bodies to any of the front court pieces that are in the main rotation for Minnesota, especially come fourth quarter. And Kahleah maybe has impact, but not impact to the same extent that she did in today's game. And I think that in specific moments shifts things just enough to where if they're able to play a full 4 quarters, they can have their identity and play the game on their terms. And to that point, I think I said 76-75. Alyssa Thomas is going to get a triple-double next game. If they knock down threes, she had 7 assists. That easily turns into 11 or 12.
If they just make their shots.
In addition to her getting close to, if not more than 20 points. I think she's going to be ultra aggressive, no different than she was in today's game, and setting a tone for the team. They couldn't win the race to the first time out today because the first time out took place with like 90 seconds left in the first quarter.
It was literally at a minute and 32 seconds.
There was just no stoppage in play. It was crazy.
Which, like, good for them, but
There's few games across the entire season that go the way that first 7.5 or 8.5 to 9 minutes went in today's game.
And again, if you play in the fact the Mercury schedule of it all, I'm like, damn, the league officials, they know what's up. Never mind though. I'll leave my conspiracies out the door.
But yeah, AT's my player of game 2. But I think quietly Sammy Whitcomb maybe has a 4 3-pointers made type of game. Because if Minnesota is going to keep showing that help that they were showing today, somebody's going to have to start making them pay. And Phoenix might be intentional about putting Sammy in those spots if you're helping off with your low defenders and it's Sammy in those corners, are you sure you want to keep doing that?
Yep.
And if you are, what's the result from that? Is Sammy knocking those shots down? And if she is, again, that's a marginal moment where an adjustment is made, and that's enough to shift the course of the game. But generally speaking, execution is the word, and I'll continue to tap the sign on that until we see a full 4 quarters worth of it from the Mercury in this series.
I'm going to have to make a taps the sign meme about execution for you. I got you. Yeah. I got you. Don't worry.
We can do an execution counter or something in the lower third, Kevin.
Oh, man. It looks like Kevin's about to say something. Oh, no, never mind. All right, well... AT 2010 and 10 game loading. I totally agree, Andy Bryant. I want to say one last time, thank you, all of you guys in the comments for tapping in with us today. I don't think we got to the 30 likes that I was looking for, and that doesn't make me all that happy. I'll be honest. Yeah, I'm going to need a few more likes because there are a few more of you in here than there are likes, and that's kind of uncool. So be sure to leave a like, 5-star review over your podcast. Become a diehard, man. I don't think there's a sale on right now, but there's literally like a sale on every other week. So if you're not a diehard right now, wait a week or so. There'll be a sale. You can do it for $36 on the year. They make it cheaper than a cup of coffee a month. It's so easy. Then you get a free shirt, free membership card, which, like, if you're at a Mercury game, it literally tells everybody around you, hey, I'm a bigger Arizona sports fan than you will ever be because I have this card. Basically is what that means. And then you get an access in the Die Hard Discord lounge, which is, again, coolest place this side of the Mississippi River. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
I wouldn't either.
They have fun in there. Even when the Mercury lose, the vibes are still up, I must say. They keep the vibes right in there. But anything else before we get out of here today, Steven?
Please don't panic.
I'm not panicking. I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm not panicked and you're panicked, that's on you, not me. Usually I am panicked. Literally after game 3, I was panicked. And now I'm not panicked. I'm not panicking at all. My vibes are up. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like, if anything, again, I think they would play game 2. Maybe not right now because they're probably a little pooped, but they might play it tomorrow if given the opportunity. So, I think this team is in a good spot. This is the same team that's had a finals countdown since before training camp started. So I think, it's easy to remember recency bias and what just happened. This game, blah, blah, blah. It was poopy, guys. But this team knows the goal at hand, and they intend to go out there and get it done.
The goal is still very much attainable. The desire was to win one of these first 2 games in Minnesota. Last time I checked, there's a game scheduled on Tuesday that they have opportunity to get to. And to that point, especially when people are talking about the quick turnaround for the players, imagine how hard it is for an assistant coach as far as game planning for a team, and you only have X amount of hours to watch the games that you need to leading up to that point. formulate your game plan specific to this matchup because you can't just do the same things that got you a win against a different opponent and expect it to work against Minnesota.
Yep.
Two teams from the same type of tier, but they're not the same. Minnesota and New York are. So you can't just do the same things. I want to hat tip them. They were very prepared for this game. I don't think it was a lack of preparation at all that they lost this game one off of. So Chrissy Tolliver, Megan Vogel, and Michael Joyner did a sensational job in preparation. Obviously, Nate is heavily involved with that as well. But these are some troops that they got. That four-person group right there been doing work. And I think they needed to get more credit for what they did against New York too. But this game went turn around unprecedented. They were more than prepared.
They are our squad. We back them. I hope they back us because ain't nobody believe in the Mercury like we do. It's been a fun year, and it's going to keep being fun. There's still a lot of basketball to be played, a whole 4 more games that are a possibility. You never know what can happen. As you can see in the Aces and the Fever game, and honestly, the Fever and the Dream series, like anything is possible in the WNBA playoffs. So don't count anybody out. It's going to be a fun rest of the series. We will obviously be back with you live for a post-game after Game 2. So be sure to tap in with us over on Twitter to know when and where we're going to be there. I always give out a timestamp so that way you guys can be prepared in the chat after win or lose. You guys want to come in here, break it down, let us know what happened, let us know how you think, and we got you. I agree with Holmes. Let's keep on trend. Game 2, Mercury blowout. Please, I love that. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. He's over at StephenPG3, our wonderful producer over at Kevo Post, me at Erika Lee Day, and all of us together making rocking and rolling content over at PHNX_Mercury. We'll see you guys on Tuesday. That's it. Bye, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.